The red laser dot trembling on the stranger's chest meant death in exactly 3 seconds, but Mia's hands were already moving before her mind registered the danger. Smile and keep talking became her survival mantra as she plunged from college student to hunted witness in the bloody world of organized crime. Before we continue, don't forget to subscribe to the channel, like the video, and comment where in the world you're watching from. Let's go. Mornings at Crescent Coffee followed a predictable rhythm. 6 a.m. Unlock doors, start brewing the house blend. 6:30. Prepare pastry display, check inventory. 7. Welcome the first wave of bleary-eyed professionals seeking caffeine salvation before their commutes. By 8, the symphony reached its crescendo, milk steamers hissing, espresso machines humming, the cash register's percussive chime punctuating it all. For Mia Reynolds, 26 and perpetually running on fumes, this morning ritual had sustained her through 3 years of night classes at the university. Criminal psychology wasn't a cheap field to study, but it fascinated her in ways that made the sleep deprivation worthwhile. Today marked precisely 17 days until her final exams, and the countdown clock in her head ticked relentlessly as she crafted a perfect rosetta on a stranger's latte. "Order for Davidson," she called out, placing the cup on the counter before turning back to her station. The morning rush had begun to thin, leaving only a few regulars and newcomers scattered among the cafe's polished wooden tables. That's when she noticed him entering tall, immaculately dressed, with the confident stride of someone accustomed to command. He wasn't a regular, but something about him struck Mia as familiar. Perhaps it was the way other patrons unconsciously shifted in their seats as he passed, or how his eyes performed a quick, subtle assessment of every corner before he approached the counter. Her criminal psychology professor would call it hypervigilance, a survival trait common in those who live dangerous lives. "Good morning," Mia offered her professional smile. "Where can I get started for you?" "Double espresso." His voice carried a slight accent she couldn't immediately place, Italian, perhaps, or possibly Eastern European. "No sugar." As she rang up his order, Mia noticed the tailoring of his charcoal suit. Definitely bespoke, probably Italian. His watch alone could have covered a semester's tuition, yet it wasn't his obvious wealth that triggered her academic interest, but rather the controlled precision of his movements. Nothing wasted, nothing excessive, like someone who'd learned that survival depended on efficiency. "Name for the order?" she asked, marker poised over the cup. A brief hesitation. Marcus. She doubted that was his real name, but it hardly mattered. Just another businessman passing through, albeit one who moved like he expected danger around every corner. As Mia prepared his espresso, the bell above the door chimed again. 3 men entered, spaced just far enough apart to appear unconnected to casual observers, but Mia's training had taught her to spot patterns others missed. The men chose separate tables with sight lines to both the entrance and Marcus, maintaining peripheral awareness of each other without direct acknowledgement. Classic surveillance triangle, she thought, the term from her behavioral analysis textbook surfacing automatically. Either law enforcement or something less official. Either way, Marcus was definitely more than just a businessman wanting coffee. When she brought his espresso to the counter, she noticed something had changed in his demeanor. His shoulders had tensed almost imperceptibly, his right hand staying closer to his side than before. He'd spotted his observers too. "Your espresso," she said, sliding it across the counter. "Anything else I can get you?" He looked up, those steel gray eyes meeting hers with an intensity that momentarily stole her breath. "No, thank you." As he reached for his cup, Mia saw it, a tiny red dot trembling on his chest just below the knot of his expertly tied tie. Her psychology courses hadn't prepared her for this, but 3 years of true crime podcasts and a father who'd taught marksmanship at the police academy had. That was a laser sight, and Marcus was seconds away from taking a bullet. Time seemed to slow. The behavioral analysis algorithms in her brain ran rapid calculations. The angle of the laser suggested a shooter positioned in the building across the street, likely 2nd or 3rd floor. The 3 men in the cafe weren't here to protect Marcus. They were spotters, ensuring he stayed in position long enough for the sniper to take the shot. Mia made her decision in a fraction of a second. As she leaned forward to hand him his receipt, she knocked the espresso directly into his lap. "Oh my God, I'm so sorry," she exclaimed, loud enough for the entire cafe to hear. In the same motion, she grabbed his arm, pulling him sideways and down behind the counter just as the window behind where he'd been standing shattered. Chaos erupted. Customers screamed, diving for cover as a second shot splintered the wooden counter above their heads. The 3 men who'd been watching Marcus drew weapons, but their target was now out of sight, huddled on the floor beside Mia. "Stay down," she whispered, already crawling toward the storage room. "There's a back exit through the kitchen." His expression had transformed from shock to focused calculation in an instant. "You saw the laser." Not a question, but an assessment. "Criminal psychology student," she replied, as if that explained everything. "The service corridor connects to the alley, but those men will check there first. Then we need a distraction." His accent was more pronounced now, definitely Eastern European. Before Mia could respond, he'd pulled a phone from his pocket, typing something with remarkable speed given their current position, crawling across the cafe floor. Seconds later, the fire alarm blared to life, sprinklers drenching everything and everyone. The sudden deluge created precisely the confusion they needed. As customers rushed for the exits and the spotters struggled to maintain visual contact through the artificial rain, Mia led Marcus through the kitchen and into the narrow service hallway beyond. Left at the end, she directed, heart pounding against her ribs, "It opens behind the dumpsters." When they reached the exit, he placed a restraining hand on her arm. Wait, he removed his jacket, then his shoulder holster came into view, confirming her suspicions about his identity. He drew his weapon, a matte black pistol that seemed an extension of his hand, and carefully pushed the door open an inch. After a tense moment of observation, he pulled it wider. Clear, but not for long. We need to move quickly. The alley stretched before them, narrow and lined with delivery entrances to neighboring businesses. Parked halfway down was a black sedan with tinted windows. My car, he said, already moving toward it. Coming? Mia hesitated. Everything she'd learned in her classes screamed that following an armed stranger, likely some kind of organized crime figure, was the definition of poor decision-making. But returning to the cafe meant facing 3 armed men who'd just witnessed her help their target escape, not to mention whoever had been pulling the sniper's trigger. What choice do I have? She muttered, following him down the alley. The car's engine purred to life before they reached it, suggesting a driver had been waiting. The rear door opened as they approached. Quickly, he urged, ushering her inside before sliding in beside her. As the sedan pulled away, accelerating smoothly into morning traffic, Mia finally allowed herself to process what had just happened. She'd spotted a sniper's laser, saved a stranger's life, and was now sitting in the back of a luxury car beside a man who was almost certainly involved in organized crime. I suppose I should thank you, he said after a moment, those gray eyes studying her with renewed interest. Most people wouldn't notice a targeting laser, and fewer still would intervene. Most people haven't spent 3 years studying criminal behavior patterns, she replied, trying to steady her breathing. Who are you really, Marcus? Thing-like appreciation flickered across his features. My name is Alexei Volkov, and you've just made some very dangerous enemies. The sedan glided through traffic with the smooth precision of a shark through deep water. From the driver's seat, a broad-shouldered man with close-cropped silver hair occasionally glanced in the rearview mirror, his eyes meeting Alexei's in silent communication. This is Victor, Alexei said, gesturing toward the driver. He doesn't speak much English, but he's excellent at his job. Mia nodded, still processing the surreal turn her morning had taken. Outside the windows, Chicago's familiar streets rolled by, but she viewed them now through a different lens, one where ordinary coffee shops became assassination sites, and strangers carried concealed weapons beneath designer suits. You still haven't told me who you are, she said, turning to face Alexei directly. Not your name, who you really are, and why someone would position a sniper to take you out during your morning coffee run. Alexei studied her for a moment, those gray eyes assessing and recalibrating. You're remarkably calm for someone who just escaped gunfire. Adrenaline, she replied with a shrug that belied her racing heart. Plus, 3 years of studying violent crime patterns gives you a skewed perspective on danger. Right now, I'm more curious than afraid. A hint of amusement touched his lip. Curiosity isn't always the safest trait. Neither is sitting in a car with a man who carries a shoulder holster to buy espresso. Yet here I am. She gestured to the space between them. Consider satisfying my curiosity as payment for saving your life. The car took a sharp turn, heading north toward the wealthy lakeside neighborhood. Alexei remained silent for nearly a minute, weighing options. Mia could almost see calculating behind his eyes. I represent certain business interests, he finally said, each word precisely chosen. Eastern European ventures seeking expansion into American markets. Sometimes such expansions create ... competitive tensions. You're with the Bratva, Mia stated flatly, putting together the accent, the controlled demeanor, and the professional hit attempt. Russian organized crime. His expression remained neutral, but something flickered in his eyes, perhaps surprise at her directness, or appreciation for her insight. Not Russian. Specifically, I represent Ukrainian interests, he corrected, though the distinction hardly matters to the Solentsevskaya group whose territory I've been negotiating to acquire. The names meant little to Mia, but the dynamics were familiar from her studies. So the coffee shop incident was a territorial dispute. She frowned, processing this. But that level of aggression, a daylight assassination in a public place, suggests escalation beyond normal business rivalry. Alexei's eyebrow raised slightly. Your academic understanding is impressive. My professor would disagree. I'm barely maintaining a B+ in organized crime structure, she said with a wry smile that faded quickly. But that doesn't explain why I'm in this car instead of giving my statement to the police. The sedan slowed, turning into a gated community where mansions stood like sentinels behind manicured hedges and security systems. The men who tried to kill me have connections within Chicago law enforcement, Alexei explained as they passed through gates that opened automatically for the vehicle. If you'd remained there, best case scenario, you'd be answering questions for hours. Worst case ... single quotes. He didn't finish the sentence. He didn't need to. They'd eliminate a witness, Mia concluded, her academic detachment finally cracking as the reality of her situation sank in. So what happens now? I can't exactly go back to making lattes. No, Alexei agreed as the car pulled into the circular driveway of a modernist glass and stone mansion, at least not immediately. You'll stay here while my team assesses the situation and ensures your safety. Mia stared at the house, then back at Alexei. And I'm supposed to just trust that you're the good guy in this scenario? For the first time since she'd met him, Alexei Volkov actually smiled. A small, controlled expression that nonetheless transformed his severe features. Ms. Reynolds, in my world, there are no good guys as you might define them. There are only varying degrees of necessity and honor. He opened the car door as Victor came around to stand at attention. But I do pay my debts. and I now owe you a considerable one. Inside, the mansion revealed itself as a blend of luxury and functionality. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked Lake Michigan, while subtle security cameras monitored every approach. The minimalist furniture spoke of wealth without ostentation. This wasn't a home so much as an outpost, beautiful but ultimately designed for purpose rather than comfort. A woman in her 40s, immaculately dressed in a tailored gray suit, met them in the foyer. Her dark hair was pulled back in a severe bun, highlighting sharp cheekbones and alert eyes that immediately assessed Mia from head to toe. "Natalia, this is Mia Reynolds," Alexei said in English. "She be our guest for the foreseeable future. Please arrange suitable accommodations and necessities." Natalia nodded once, efficiently. Of course, the Solnitsevskaya situation escalating faster than anticipated. Call Dmitri and Ivan full security protocol. He turned to Mia. "Natalia will show you to a room where you can rest. I imagine the adrenaline crash will hit soon." As if his words had summoned it, a wave of exhaustion swept over Mia. The events at the coffee shop, which had occurred less than 30 minutes ago, suddenly felt distant, like something viewed through the wrong end of a telescope. "I should call work," she said, the mundane concern feeling absurdly normal in the current circumstance. "And the university. I have an exam on Tuesday." Something like sympathy crossed Alexei's features. "I'm afraid those concerns may need to wait. Using your phone now could create a digital trail leading directly to this location, so I'm effectively off the grid," Mia said, the academic part of her mind noting how quickly one could transition from normal life to complete isolation. "For how long? Until we've neutralized the threat." Alexei checked his watch, the same expensive timepiece she'd noticed earlier, now carrying different significance. "I have calls to make. Natalia will see to your needs." As he strode away, phone already in hand, Mia fought against the surreal quality of the situation. This morning she'd been a barista and student. Now she was caught in the crossfire of an international organized crime conflict, standing in the mansion of a Ukrainian crime figure she'd saved on pure instinct. "This way, Miss Reynolds," Natalia said, her accent thicker than Alexei's. "You've had quite the morning. Perhaps you'd like to shower and change before lunch." Mia followed numbly, her criminal psychology training providing the ironic awareness that she was experiencing the early stages of shock. Part of her, the rational academic part, cataloged her own responses with clinical interest. The other part wondered if she'd ever see her apartment again, or finish her degree, or experience normal life after today's events. "Just one question," she said as Natalia led her up a sweeping staircase. "The laser sight, was I right about the building across the street?" Natalia paused, studying Mia with newfound interest. "Third floor, corner office. You have a good eye, Miss Reynolds. Mr. Volkov values such perception." She continued up the stairs. Perhaps saving his life was not mere coincidence after all. The guest room Natalia led her to was larger than Mia's entire apartment. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a panoramic view of Lake Michigan, though the glass was clearly bulletproof, thicker than normal and faintly tinted. The adjoining bathroom featured Italian marble and a shower with more settings than her car. On the bed lay clothing still in retail packaging, designer jeans, blouses, even underwear, all in her size. "How did you know my size?" Mia asked, fingering the price tag on a cashmere sweater that cost more than her monthly rent. Natalia's expression remained impassive. "Miss Volkov is observant." The implication sent an unexpected shiver through Mia. She'd been trained to notice details. It was fundamental to her studies in behavioral analysis, but being on the receiving end of such scrutiny felt different. "Lunch will be served downstairs in 1 hour," Natalia continued. "There's a secure tablet on the nightstand if you need entertainment. No outside connections, of course," single quotes. After Natalia departed, Mia tested the door. Not locked. She explored the room methodically, her academic training kicking in. The windows didn't open. The tablet was loaded with books and movies, but lacked any communication capabilities. The closet contained more new clothing than she could wear in a month. It was a beautiful prison, but a prison nonetheless. The shower helped restore some sense of normalcy, the hot water washing away the smell of coffee and fear. As she dressed in the provided clothes which fit perfectly, another disconcerting detail, Mia tried to analyze her situation objectively. Fact 1. She'd witnessed an attempted murder. Fact 2. The target was connected to Ukrainian organized crime. Fact 3. She'd intervened, making herself a liability to the would-be killers. Fact 4. She was now in the protective custody of the man she'd saved. Her criminal psychology professor would have a field day with this scenario. Stockholm Syndrome possibilities alone would fill a research paper. An hour later, Mia descended the sweeping staircase to find Alexei at a dining table spread with an array of food that would put most restaurants to shame. He changed into a charcoal turtleneck that somehow made him look both more approachable and more dangerous. "I wasn't sure what you preferred," he said, gesturing to the spread. "Natalia tends to overcompensate when I have guests. Is that what I am? A guest?" Mia took the seat across from him, maintaining eye contact. Because guests can generally leave when they want to." Alexei poured her a glass of water from a crystal decanter. "You're free to leave whenever you wish, Ms. Reynolds." I simply wouldn't recommend it until we've neutralized the Solonsevskaya threat. He selected food for his plate with the same efficiency she'd noticed in all his movements. You saved my life. I have no intention of holding you prisoner, just protecting your investment, she observed, serving herself a small portion of what appeared to be salmon. A fleeting smile crossed his features. Protecting an ally. In my world, that's significantly more valuable than any investment. They ate in silence for several minutes, the sterling silverware clinking against fine china in the cavernous dining room. Through the windows, Lake Michigan stretched like an inland sea, its surface glittering in the midday sun. Your accent, Mia said finally. QU? Alexei paused, fork halfway to his mouth. Odessa originally. Though I spent many years in QU, your ear for linguistics is as impressive as your eye for sniper lasers. My mother was a language professor before she died. I grew up learning to distinguish phonological patterns. Mia took a sip of water. Also, I dated a Ukrainian exchange student my sophomore year. He was from Lviv, but we had friends from Odessa. And now you study criminal psychology while serving espresso. It wasn't a question, but an observation as he continued reassessing her. Student loans don't pay themselves, she replied with a shrug, and coffee shops offer flexible hours for full-time students. What drew you to criminal psychology specifically? The question seemed genuinely curious rather than merely conversational. Mia considered deflecting, but found herself answering honestly. My father was a police officer. He was killed during a convenience store robbery when I was 14. The man who shot him had a long history of escalating criminal behavior patterns that, in retrospect, were obvious predictors of violence. She set down her fork. I wanted to understand those patterns, maybe help prevent others from experiencing what my family did. Something shifted in Alexei's expression, a momentary softening that vanished as quickly as it appeared. Admirable, he said simply, though perhaps ironic given your current company. Before she could respond, Victor entered the dining room, speaking rapidly in Ukrainian. Alexei's demeanor changed instantly, his body language shifting from relaxed to alert. He responded with terse instructions, then turned to Mia. You should return to your room, he said, already standing. We have visitors approaching, potentially hostile. Mia's pulse quickened. The people from the coffee shop? Unclear. But it's best to be cautious. He moved with controlled urgency, escorting her toward the stairs. Stay in your room until I or Natalia comes for you. Under the bed is a panic button that will alert security if necessary. As they reached the landing, the distant sound of car engines became audible. Alexei paused, reaching inside his jacket to touch what she assumed was his holster. Your educational background, he said suddenly. How much practical application have you had beyond academic theory? 6 months interning with the Chicago PD's Behavioral Analysis Unit, she answered, surprised by the question's timing. Why? Because theory and practice often diverge significantly. His gray eyes held hers. If something happens to me, Victor will ensure your safe extraction. But you should know that the Solonsevskaya don't leave loose ends. Before Mia could process the implication, Natalia appeared at the top of the stairs, a compact submachine gun held casually at her side as if it were nothing more unusual than a cell phone. 3 vehicles, she reported in Ukrainian accented English. 8 men minimum. Perimeter sensors detected weapons. Alexei nodded once. Initiate protocol, Ember. As Natalia moved away, Alexei turned back to Mia. Stay in your room, lock the door, use the panic button if anyone other than me or Natalia attempts to enter. The businesslike facade had completely vanished, replaced by something far more dangerous, predator preparing for conflict. This was the real Alexei Volkov, Mia realized. Not the polished businessman who ordered espresso, but a man accustomed to violence and survival. What's happening? She asked, forcing her voice to remain steady. Either negotiation or confrontation. His hand brushed her arm briefly, the lightest touch, there and gone. Either way, your safety depends on following my instructions precisely. With that, he descended the stairs, drawing his weapon with the practiced ease of someone for whom it was an extension of his body. Mia watched him go, the criminal psychology student in her fascinated by the transformation, while the part that was simply human felt a cold knot of fear form in her stomach. She retreated to her room, locking the door as instructed. Through the bulletproof windows, she could see black SUVs approaching the house's circular driveway, harbingers of whatever was about to unfold. Mia slid her hand beneath the bed, finding the panic button exactly where Alexei had said it would be. She didn't press it, but kept her fingers resting on its surface as she tried to steady her breathing. Her life had changed irrevocably the moment she'd spotted that red laser dot on Alexei Volkov's chest, and there was no going back now. From her window, Mia watched the choreography of power unfold on the circular driveway below. 3 black SUVs formed a half moon around the entrance. Men in dark suits emerged, disciplined, synchronized, carrying themselves with the practiced vigilance she'd studied in her criminal behavior courses. They positioned themselves in a defensive formation that suggested military or special forces training. Then a 4th vehicle arrived, a silver Maybach that purred to a stop in the center of the formation. The driver emerged first, opening the rear door with ceremonial precision. The man who stepped out was shorter than Mia had expected, maybe 5'8", with silver hair and the ruddy complexion of someone who enjoyed fine dining. His suit probably cost more than her entire education. Unlike his security detail, this man moved with the casual confidence of someone who rarely needed to defend himself physically, Others handled that messy business, power by proxy. A distant part of Mia's brain cataloged these observations with academic detachment. The rest of her wondered if she was watching the arrival of the people who'd tried to kill Alexei this morning. The front door opened. Alexei emerged onto the portico, flanked by Victor and two other men she hadn't seen before. Even from this distance, she could see that his posture had changed, his shoulders squared, chin slightly elevated, the stance of a predator facing another predator, neither willing to show submission. The silver-haired man spread his arms in what appeared to be a greeting, though Mia couldn't hear the exchange. Body language suggested it was cordial on the surface, tense underneath. After brief words, Alexei gestured toward the house, inviting the visitors inside. Mia stepped back from the window, heart racing. The meeting was moving indoors where she was. She glanced at the panic button, then at the door she'd locked. Decisions crystallized in her mind with sudden clarity. Knowledge was protection. If she could hear what they were discussing, she'd have a better understanding of her situation. Moving silently, Mia approached her door and pressed her ear against it. Nothing yet. She needed to get closer to wherever the meeting would take place. The layout of the house suggested the study downstairs would be the logical location, private, but accessible from the main entrance. She unlocked her door with exquisite care, easing it open just enough to slip through. The hallway was empty, the sounds of formal greetings echoing up from the foyer below. Moving on instinct, Mia patted down the hallway in her socked feet until she found what she was looking for, a service staircase, likely used by staff to move discreetly through the mansion. The narrow stairs led down to a dimly lit corridor lined with closed doors. Voices grew clearer as she approached what appeared to be a pantry. Beyond it, she could make out the kitchen, and through another doorway, a partial view of what must be the study. Men's voices, some speaking English, others Ukrainian and Russian, filtered through. "Consider it of you to accept my unannounced visit, Volkov," a cultured voice was saying in accented English, especially after this morning's unfortunate misunderstanding. "Is that what you call an assassination attempt, Baranov? A misunderstanding?" Alexei's voice was controlled, but Mia could hear the dangerous edge beneath it. "A rogue element within my organization," Baranov replied smoothly. "Already dealt with, I assure you." The shooter was acting without authorization. A beat of silence. "And the three men inside the cafe? Low-level enforcers. Overzealous. Also handled. Handled. I assume you mean eliminated before they could implicate you directly." Alexei's tone was conversational, but the accusation was clear. Soft laughter from multiple voices. "Business is business, Volkov. You understand the necessity." Mia edged closer, finding a position where she could see a sliver of the study through a partially open door. The silver-haired man Baranov sat in a leather armchair holding a crystal tumbler of what appeared to be whiskey. Alexei stood near the fireplace, his posture deceptively relaxed. "What I understand," Alexei replied, "is that territorial expansions require negotiation, not assassination. That was our agreement when I acquired the Lowenstein distribution channel." Baranov waved his free hand dismissively. "The landscape has shifted. The American operation requires ... consolidation, and my operation interferes with this consolidation." "Your operation," Baranov said with sudden sharpness, "was meant to be temporary. 6 months to establish a foothold for our mutual benefit. It's been 18, Alexei Ivanovich. Your ambitions have exceeded our arrangement." The atmosphere in the room changed, tension crackling like static electricity before a storm. Mia held her breath. "My ambitions," Alexei said softly, "are precisely in line with my capability. Your concern is that those capabilities have proven greater than you anticipate." Baranov sipped his whiskey, his expression hardening. "There is also the matter of the witness from this morning. The barista." Mia's blood ran cold. "What about her?" Alexei's voice revealed nothing. "She saw too much, identified our operatives, made herself a liability." Baranov set down his glass with deliberate precision. "She needs to be eliminated." "No." The single word hung in the air like a blade. Baranov's eyebrows rose. "No, this is not negotiable, Volkov. Loose ends are. The woman is under my protection." Alexei's posture shifted. Satalia, coiled spring tightening further. "She saved my life. In our world, that creates a debt that supersedes your concerns about witnesses. Sentiment?" Baranov scoffed. "From Alexei Volkov? The woman has made you soft." "The woman," Alexei correct, "has shown more courage and loyalty in one moment than your organization has demonstrated in years of partnership. She stays alive." The tension in the room thickened to something palpable. Several of Baranov's men shifted their weight, hands drifting toward concealed weapons. "This is not a request, Alexei Ivanovich," Baranov said coldly. "The girl dies. Tonight. Whether by your hand or ours makes no difference to me." Mia backed away from the door, heart hammering against her ribs. Her academic understanding of organized crime dynamics was clashing violently with the reality of hearing her own execution being ordered so casually. She needed to get back to her room, to think, to plan. A hand closed over her mouth from behind. Mia's instincts kicked in immediately. She drove her elbow backward with all her strength, connecting with solid abdominal muscle. The grip loosened just enough for her to twist away, ready to fight or flee. "Quiet," Natalia hissed, her expression more annoyed than angry. "You'll get us both killed." Relief washed through Mia, quickly replaced by dread. She whispered. Of course they do. Natalia gripped her arm, pulling her back toward the service stairs with surprising strength. Now move. Silently. As they ascended, the voices from the study grew more heated, the measured tones giving way to sharper exchanges. They reached Mia's room just as something crashed downstairs, glass breaking, followed by raised voices. Stay here, Natalia ordered, pushing Mia inside. Lock the door. Use the panic button if anyone other than myself or Alexei attempts to enter. She withdrew a small pistol from beneath her jacket, pressing it into Mia's hands. Last resort only. Point and pull. No hesitation. Before Mia could respond, Natalia was gone, the door closing behind her. The weight of the gun felt alien in her hands, cold, deadly potential encased in metal. She set it carefully on the nightstand, then moved to the window, watching for any sign of what was unfolding. Below, the security details for both men had shifted positions, hands now openly resting on weapons. The negotiation was clearly deteriorating. For the first time since spotting the laser sight that morning, Mia felt truly afraid, not just for herself, but for Alexei, the man who had just refused an order to have her killed, potentially signing his own death warrant in the process. Mia lost track of time as she waited, the gun a constant reminder of her new reality on the nightstand beside her. From her window, she watched Baranov's convoy eventually depart, the formation just as precise leaving as it had been arriving. No shots had been fired, at least not outside the house. The tension in the vehicle's departure was palpable even from a distance. When her door finally opened, she whirled around, hand instinctively reaching for the weapon Natalia had given her. That won't be necessary, Alexei said from the doorway. His perfect composure had fractured slightly, tie loosened, a faint bruise forming along his jaw, eyes harder than before. Though your instinct for self-preservation is commendable, what happened? Mia asked, letting her hand fall back to her side. Alexei closed the door behind him, moving to the window where she stood. Baranov and I have reached an impasse in our negotiations, I heard. When his eyebrow raised in question, she continued. I was downstairs. Natalia caught me. Something like amusement flickered across his features. Of course you were. Criminal psychology students are naturally curious, especially when people are discussing their execution, Mia replied, searching his face. You refused to kill me. I did. Why? It would solve your problems. I'm just a barista who saw too much. Alexei studied her for a moment, then turned to gaze out at the darkening lake. In my world, Miss Reynolds, there are precious few absolutes. One is that debts must be paid. You saved my life without hesitation or expectation of reward. That creates an obligation I take seriously, even at the cost of your business relationship with Baranov. That relationship was deteriorating regardless, he replied with a dismissive gesture. Baranov sees America as his exclusive territory. I see it as a land of opportunity for expansion. Our conflict was inevitable. Mia processed this, her academic training kicking in. So this morning's assassination attempt wasn't just about me witnessing something. It was a strategic move in a larger power struggle. Precisely. Alexei turned back to face her. Though your intervention has accelerated the timeline considerably, the weight of this revelation settled over her. One split-second decision to knock over a cup of coffee had catapulted her into the center of an organized crime war. What happens now? She asked. Now, Alexei said, we prepare for escalation. Baranov will not accept my refusal gracefully. He'll likely make another attempt on both of us. You should have just handed me over, Mia said quietly. Tactically speaking, it would have been the rational choice. Something shifted in Alexei's expression, a subtle softening around the eyes. Tactical decisions aren't always strategic ones, Miss Reynolds, and neither necessarily align with one's principles. I didn't think crime bosses operated on principle. A ghost of a smile touched his lips, a common misconception. In reality, principles are what separate legitimate authorities in our world from simple thugs with guns. He gestured to the chair near the window. May I? When Mia nodded, he sat with the fluid grace she'd come to associate with him. She took the seat opposite, acutely aware of the strange intimacy of the moment, an organized crime leader and a barista discussing principles in a lakeside mansion while killers potentially plotted outside. You didn't ask to be involved in this, Alexei said after a moment. For that, I apologize. I made my choice when I saw that laser sight, Mia replied, though I didn't exactly anticipate the consequences. Few do. He leaned forward slightly. Tell me, with your training in criminal psychology, what would your assessment be of this situation? Professionally speaking. The question caught her off guard. You want my professional opinion? I'm still a student who spotted a sniper's laser and accurately identified a surveillance triangle in seconds, he countered. Your instincts are exceptional. I value that perspective. Mia considered for a moment, organizing her thoughts as she would for one of her advanced seminars. Baranov exhibits classic territorial behavior patterns. He perceives your presence as an intrusion on what he considers his exclusive domain. The escalation to attempted elimination suggests he views diplomacy as having failed already. She paused. His insistence on having me killed isn't just about eliminating a witness, it's a dominance display. If you comply, you acknowledge his authority. By refusing, you've issued a direct challenge. Alexei nodded slowly, his eyes never leaving her face. And your assessment of me, Miss Reynolds? What does your training tell you about my motivations? That's harder, she admitted. You operate with precision and control. suggesting military or specialized training rather than traditional organized crime pathways. Your protection of me contradicts standard risk management protocols in criminal enterprises. There's something else at play, either a strict personal code or ... single quotes, she hesitated. Or this isn't strictly business for you anymore. Something about this situation or about me has triggered a personal involvement that's overriding your tactical judgment. The silence that followed stretched between them, charged with unspoken currents. Finally, Alexei nodded once, remarkably perceptive. My background is indeed military Spetsnaz before Ukraine's independence. And you're correct that this situation has become personal. Before he could elaborate, the door opened. Natalia entered without knocking, her expression grim. We have movement, she reported in terse Ukrainian, which Mia understood just enough of to catch the urgency. Perimeter sensors detected multiple approaching vehicles. Alexei was on his feet in an instant. All traces of the contemplative man vanished behind the mask of the tactician. How many? At least 5, coming from different directions. Natalia handed him a tablet displaying what appeared to be a security. They're coordinating. Mia stood as well, pulse quickening. Baranov? Most likely, Alexei confirmed, studying the tablet. He's moved faster than I anticipated. What do we do? Mia asked, surprised by the steadiness of her own voice. Alexei looked up, his gray eyes meeting hers with unexpected intensity. We need to leave now, he turned to Natalia. Initiate protocol Frost. Full evacuation. Natalia nodded sharply and disappeared back into the hallway, already speaking rapid instructions into a concealed microphone at her wrist. Protocol Frost? Mia echoed. Emergency extraction, Alexei explained, already moving toward the door. We have approximately 11 minutes before Baranov's team breaches the perimeter. We'll be gone in 7. Where are we going? Alexei paused at the doorway, something unreadable flickering across his features. Somewhere even Baranov wouldn't dare follow. Pack nothing. Everything you need will be provided. As he disappeared into the hallway, Mia felt a strange calm descend over her. The academic part of her mind noted her own reaction with clinical interest. This wasn't the panicked response of a civilian thrown into danger, but the focused alertness of someone adapting to crisis. Perhaps that was why she'd spotted the laser sight that morning. Perhaps some part of her had always been preparing for a moment like this. She picked up the gun from the nightstand, checking its weight and balance as her father had taught her years ago. Then she followed Alexei into the corridor, leaving behind the brief illusion of safety the room had provided. The mansion transformed around Mia, its elegant facade giving way to reveal the fortress beneath. Security personnel materialized from rooms she hadn't known existed. Paintings slid aside to expose weapon caches. What had appeared to be decorative wall panels opened to reveal monitors displaying the property's perimeter, where blinking red indicators showed multiple approaching threats. This way, Alexei directed, leading her not toward the main entrance but down a corridor she hadn't explored. The garage has a secondary exit that won't be in Baranov's intelligence briefings. Victor met them at a reinforced door, handing Alexei a tablet displaying what appeared to be satellite imagery. They exchanged rapid-fire Ukrainian that Mia couldn't follow before Victor disappeared back the way they had come. Victor staying? She asked as Alexei punched a code into a keypad beside the door. Someone needs to slow them down, he replied, his tone matter-of-fact. Victor volunteered. The implications settled like ice in Mia's stomach. You mean he's sacrificing himself? Alexei's eyes met hers brief. He's buying time. There's a difference. The door slid open, revealing not a traditional garage but an underground facility housing half a dozen vehicles ranging from armored SUVs to nondescript sedans. Get in, he instructed, indicating a matte black BMW with heavily tinted windows. Passenger side, as she slid into the vehicle. Mia noted the modifications visible even to her untrained eye-reinforced panels. Bulletproof glass, at least twice the standard thickness. The interior smelled of leather and gun oil. Alexei joined her, his movements precise as he initiated what appeared to be a biometric security system. The vehicle hummed to life, dashboard displays illuminating with information feeds that looked more military than civilian. 5 minutes, he noted, checking a countdown displayed on one of the screens. Ahead of schedule, Natalia appeared at the driver's side window, passing Alexei a slim attached case through the partially lowered glass. They exchanged quick words in Ukrainian, for she slapped the roof twice and stepped back. The BMW rolled forward, approaching a wall that appeared solid until Alexei pressed something on the steering wheel. A section slid aside, revealing a tunnel bathed in low blue emergency lighting. Where are we going? Mia asked as they accelerated into the passage, the wall closing seamlessly behind them. To the one place Baranov can't follow without starting a war he can't win, Alexei replied, focused on navigating the narrow tunnel. My family's state in northern Wisconsin. Ancestral territory, you might say. Why can't Baranov follow us there? Because the property doesn't officially exist. It's protected by arrangements that predate even Baranov's rise to power. A slight smile touched his lips. Some would call it sacred ground. The tunnel emerged onto a service road that connected to a highway on-ramp. Alexei drove with the same controlled precision that characterized all his movements, maintaining exactly the speed limit, Nothing that would attract attention. As the adrenaline of the escape began to fade, reality crashed over Mia in waves. 24 hours ago, she'd been a barista and student with a cramped apartment and student loans. Now she was fleeing for her life beside a Ukrainian crime boss, leaving behind everything she knew. My phone, she realized suddenly. My wallet, ID, everything, it's all back in my apartment. Already handled, Alexei replied. Natalia dispatched a team to secure your residence and personal effects once we identified you this morning. Essential items have been transferred to our destination. The casual revelation that he'd sent people to her apartment, had known her address without asking, should have terrified her. Instead, Mia found herself oddly reassured by his thoroughness. And my classes? I have finals next week. Alexei glanced at her, something like admiration in his expression. Most people in your situation would not be concerned with academics, Ms. Reynolds. Education is stability, she replied simply. In a situation where everything else has changed, it's something I can still control. He nodded slowly. Arrangements can be made for remote testing once we've secured our position. Your professors will receive appropriate documentation regarding a family emergency. They drove in silence for several miles, the highway giving way to less traveled roads as they headed north. Through the windshield, Mia watched the Chicago skyline recede in the distance, a physical manifestation of her life growing more remote with each passing mile. I heard what you said to Baranov, she said finally, about me showing more loyalty in one moment than his organization had in years. Alexei's hands tightened almost imperceptibly on the steering wheel. You were not meant to hear that. But you meant it? I did. He checked the mirrors before continuing, a habit that seemed ingrained rather than conscious. Loyalty is rare in my world, Miss Reynolds. Most relationships are transactional alliances of convenience that last only until a better opportunity presents itself. And what we have isn't transactional? She challenged. You're protecting me because I saved your life. That's the definition of a transaction. A slight smile touched his lips. Is that why you knocked over my espresso? To secure my protection? No, of course not. I did it because... She stopped, realizing the point he was making. You acted on instinct, he finished for her, without calculation or expectation of return. That kind of action reveals character in its purest form. He paused. And character, M's. Reynolds is exceedingly rare, in my experience. The compliment, if that's what it was, hung between them as they continued north. The cityscape giving way to suburbs, then to the open countryside of northern Illinois. Night had fallen completely, the road ahead illuminated only by the BMW's headlights and the occasional passing car. Baranov's men will have discovered our escape route by now, Alexei said, breaking the companionable silence that had settled between them. They'll have people monitoring highways, airports, train stations, but not looking for us here? Mia gestured to the rural two-lane road they'd turned onto. They'll expect us to flee the country or seek reinforcements in major cities. Baranov thinks like a Russian, strength in numbers, overwhelming force. Something like pride entered his voice. Ukrainians understand that sometimes survival means becoming invisible. As he spoke, the BMW's navigation system alerted them to a roadblock ahead. Local police, according to the scanner built into the dashboard. Routine or Baranov? Mia asked, tension returning to her shoulders. Unlikely to be Baranov's people direct, but he has connections in law enforcement. Alexei's demeanor shifted subtly, his posture relaxing, his expression becoming more open. Follow my lead. We're a couple returning from a business dinner in the city. You're tired. I'm driving you home. The transformation was remarkable. The dangerous edge that had defined him all day softened into something almost ordinary. A businessman at the end of a long day, nothing more. Your name is Michael Wells, he continued, reaching into his jacket to produce a wallet and passing it to her. Inside, you'll find your Illinois driver's license with your photo. Memorize the address. You're an investment banker. We've been dating for 8 months. How did you... Later, he interrupted as they approached flashing lights ahead. For now, just smile and keep talking. Act natural. Our lives depend on it. The police roadblock consisted of 2 cruisers positioned to funnel traffic into a single lane, their light bars casting alternating blue and red patterns across the rural landscape. 2 officers stood beside the checkpoint, one examining driver's licenses while the other surveyed vehicles with a tactical flashlight. Alexei slowed the BMW to a crawl, his transformation into Michael Wells complete. Gone was the predatory vigilance, replaced by the mild annoyance of a businessman inconvenienced by unexpected delays. He even slouched slightly in his seat, a subtle but effective alteration to his usual perfect posture. Remember, he murmured, tired investment banker after a long day. Follow my lead. As they pulled to a stop, Mia adopted what she hoped was an appropriately exhausted expression, letting her shoulders slump against the leather seat. She'd taken enough acting electives to understand the basics of character embodiment, find the emotional truth, and work outward. The officer approached Alexei's window, which hummed down smoothly. Evening, Officer Alexei greeted in flawless Midwestern American English, his Ukrainian accent completely vanished. Everything all right? License and registration, sir. The officer's flashlight beam swept across the interior of the vehicle, lingering briefly on Mia. Alexei produced the documents with the casual confidence of someone with nothing to hide. Is there a problem? We're just heading up to our lake house for the weekend. The officer examined the license, comparing the photo to Alexei's face. Michael Wells, Chicago address? That's right, financial district. Alexei offered an affable smile. Long day at the office. Looking forward to some peace and quiet, aren't we, honey? Mia summoned a tired smile. God, yes. If I have to look at one more spreadsheet today, I might scream. The officer nodded, returning the license. There was an incident in the city earlier. We're checking all vehicles heading north. He gestured toward the trunk. Mind if I take a look? Not at all. Alexei pressed a button on the console, and the trunk lid rose with a soft hydraulic hiss, though it's mostly just luggage and golf clubs. The second officer circled to the rear of the BMW, his flashlight beam dancing across the contents. You folks planning a long stay? That's a lot of bags. Long weekend, Alexei replied smoothly. My girlfriend packs for every contingency. Right, babe? Mia channeled every romantic comedy she'd ever watched. You never complain when I bring that black dress you like so much, she teased, leaning her head on his shoulder with calculated affection. The officer examining their trunk chuckled. My wife's the same way. Could be gone overnight and she packs like we're moving. His colleague circled back to the driver's window. Where'd you say your lake house was located? Eagle River. Alexei replied without hesitation. Just off County Road K. My grandfather built it back in the 70s. Been in the family ever since. The mention of Eagle River, a town known for generational vacation homes, seemed to satisfy the officer. He stepped back, gesturing them through. Drive safely. Roads get tricky up north after dark. Alexei nodded his thanks, easing the BMW forward through the checkpoint. Mia maintained her relaxed posture until they were well past the flashing lights, only then allowing the tension to drain from her shoulders. That was ... single quotes, she began. Standard procedure, Alexei finished, his accent returning as he straightened his posture, reclaiming his true identity, though the timing is suspicious. Baranov works quickly. How did you do that? Mia asked. The accent, the mannerisms, it became someone else entirely. A ghost of a smile touched. Military intelligence training enhanced by necessity. In my line of work, adaptability is survival. He glanced at her. You performed admirably yourself. The head on my shoulder was a convincing touch. Heat crept into Mia's cheeks at the reminder of their brief physical contact. Theater minor, she explained, before I switched to psychology. An unusual combination. Not really. Both involve understanding human behavior, just different applications. They drove in silence for several miles, the rural landscape giving way to denser forest as they continued north. Occasional headlights passed in the opposite direction, but traffic had thinned to almost nothing this far from the city. How much further? Mia asked eventually, watching the pine trees flash by outside her window. 3 hours, approximately, Alexei replied, assuming no further complications. The reality of her situation settled over her again, fleeing north with a man she barely knew, leaving behind her entire life. My finals, she said quietly, more to herself than to him. Alexei glanced at her. As I said, arrangements can be made, it's not just that. Mia turned to face him fully. My entire life is in Chicago. My apartment, my job, my education. I can't just disappear. You already have, he replied, his tone gentle but unyielding. The moment you saved my life, you became part of my world. Baranov doesn't forgive witnesses, Miss Reynolds. Even if I were to leave you behind, he would find you. The blunt assessment hung between them, undeniable in its logic. For how long? She asked. How long does this ... exile last? Alexei's expression remained impassive, but something flickered in his eyes. Regret, perhaps. Until Baranov is no longer a threat. And how does that happen? There's several possibilities, he said carefully. Diplomatic resolution is always preferable, but unlikely, Mia observed, reading between the lines. Given today's events ... Yes, the implications settled over her like a physical weight. This wasn't a temporary inconvenience, but a fundamental reshaping of her existence. The life she'd built was gone, perhaps permanently. I should be more afraid, she said, surprised by her own relative calm. According to everything I've studied about trauma responses, I should be in shock or panic. Alexei's hand shifted on the steering wheel, his eyes never leaving the road ahead. Fear is a luxury in survival situations. Your mind has adapted remarkably well, focusing on what matters, staying alive. Is that what military intelligence teaches? Among other things. He paused, then added, though few respond as effectively as you have. Coming from him, it felt like high praise indeed. They stopped once for fuel at a remote station near the Wisconsin border, Alexei maintaining his Michael Wells persona throughout the brief interaction with the sleepy-eyed attendant. Back on the road, Mia found herself fighting exhaustion, the day's events finally catching up with her. Sleep if you need to, Alexei said, noticing her struggle. We're still an hour from the property. Is it safe? She asked, already feeling her eyelids growing heavy. I'll wake you if anything changes, he promised. She meant to close her eyes for just a moment, but exhaustion claimed her completely. Her last conscious thought was the strangeness of feeling safe beside a man who, by any objective measure, should terrify her. Mia woke to gentle pressure on her shoulder. The car had stopped, the engine silent. Through the windshield, she could make out a towering wrought iron gate illuminated by the BMW's headlights. Intricate patterns forged into the metal. We've arrived, Alexei said quietly, his hand withdrawing from her shoulder. The perimeter checkpoint. She straightened, disoriented from sleep sleep in the unfamiliar surroundings. They appeared to be in the middle of dense forest, no other signs of civilization visible beyond the imposing gate. A security camera mounted on a nearby tree swiveled toward them, its red indicator light blinking as it performed what Mia assumed was some form of recognition protocol. The gate began to open inward, moving with surprising silence for its substantial size. "Welcome to Vavhahora," Alexei said as he guided the BMW forward. "Wolf Hill," in English. "My family's refuge for 3 generations." The driveway wound through pristine forest for nearly a mile before opening onto a clearing that took Mia's breath away. Nestled against the backdrop of a small mountain was not the modern mansion she'd expected, but something that looked transported directly from the Carpathian Mountains. A sprawling timber and stone structure that blended seamlessly with its natural surroundings, windows glowing with warm light against the darkness. Quote, "This isn't what I imagined," she admitted as they approached. "What did you expect?" "Concrete and security camera." There was a hint of amusement in his voice. "Something less beautiful," she replied honestly. The BMW crunched to a stop on the gravel courtyard. Before Alexei could exit, the massive oak front doors swung open, revealing a tall man with silver-streaked dark hair. Despite appearing to be in his 60s, he carried himself with military precision that mirrored Alexei's own bearing. "My uncle Petro," Alexei explained as he killed the engine. "He oversees the estate." The older man approached as they exited the vehicle, embracing Alexei with unexpected warmth before turning his attention to Mia. His eyes, the same storm gray as Alexei assessed her with practiced efficiency. "So this is the brave Barista," he said, his accent thicker than Alexei's, but his English perfectly understandable. "The one who sees what others miss." "Mia Reynolds," she introduced herself, extending her hand. Instead of shaking it, Petro clasped it between both of his own. "You have brought honor to our house by saving my nephew's life. The Volkov family is in your debt." The formality of the declaration startled her. "I just knocked over a coffee," she demurred, "and in doing so preserved a legacy." He released her hand, turning to address Alexei in rapid Ukrainian. Mia caught fragments, something about security protocols and perimeter reports before. Petro gestured for them to follow him inside. The interior of the house matched its exterior rustic elegance that spoke of old wealth, rather than nouveau rich ostentation. Exposed timber beams crossed high ceilings. A massive stone fireplace dominated the great room, flanked by bookshelves filled with volumes in multiple languages. The furniture was substantial and clearly antique, yet nothing felt museum-like or untouched. "This has been in your family for generations?" Mia asked, taking in the space with undisguised wonder. "Since 1952, Alexei confirmed. My grandfather established it after emigrating from Ukraine following the war. It served as both residence and operational headquarters during the Cold War." "Operational headquarters for what?" Petro and Alexei exchanged a glance before the older man nodded almost imperceptibly. "For an organization that predates the Soviet Union," Alexei explained, leading her toward the fireplace where a fire burned steadily. "What you Americans might call organized crime is for my family. More accurately described as a parallel governance structure, one that operated when official channels failed our people." Mia absorbed this, her academic mind making connections, like how the Sicilian Mafia initially formed to protect locals when the state couldn't or wouldn't. Similar in origin, though different in evolution, Alexei agreed. "My grandfather was a pure Ukrainian resistance. When Soviet forces made official opposition impossible, underground networks became essential for survival. Those networks eventually became your current organization," Mia concluded. "With significant adaptations over time, yes." Alexei gestured to a comfortable-looking armchair. "Please sit. You must be exhausted." She sank into the chair, suddenly aware of how physically and mentally drained she truly was. "So this place is protected not just by security systems, but by historical respect. That's why Baranov won't follow us here." "Precisely." Petro had disappeared momentarily, returning now with a tray bearing 3 crystal glasses and a decanter of amber liquid. Even during the most violent periods of territorial conflict, certain boundaries remained inviolable. Family compounds chief among them. "A gentleman's agreement among thieves," Mia observed. Instead of taking offense, both men smiled, Petro openly, Alexei with the subtle expression she was beginning to recognize as his version of amusement. An apt description, the older man acknowledged, pouring measures of what appeared to be whiskey, though one increasingly under threat from the new generation of leaders like Baranov, who value expediency over tradition. Mia accepted the offered glass, but didn't drink immediately. "If that's true, what's to stop him from coming here anyway?" "The consequences would be catastrophic," Alexei explained, taking his own glass and settling into the chair opposite hers. "Not just from us, but from every other traditional organization. Even the Italians and Irish would unite against such a violation of fundamental protocol. It would be declaring war not just on us, but on the entire old structure," Petro added. "Even Baranov isn't that." The fire crackled in the comfortable silence that followed. Outside, Mia could hear the wind moving through pine trees, a soothing whisper that felt impossibly distant from the chaos of Chicago just hours ago. "Your room has been prepared," Petro said after they'd finished their drinks. "Alexei can show you. We've arranged for clothes and necessities as promised." "Thank you," Mia replied, setting down her empty glass. "This is all very ... single quotes overwhelming," the older man suggested with unexpected gentleness. "Surreal." she corrected. 24 hours ago, I was making lattes and worrying about finals. Petro's expression softened. Life pivots on moments we rarely anticipate, Ms. Reynolds. Your decision this morning, pure instinct, I suspect has altered not just your path, but many others. After Petro excused himself, Alexei led Mia through the house to a second-floor bedroom that continued the theme of rustic luxury, a four-poster bed with hand-carved details, windows overlooking the moonlit forest, and a stone fireplace that had been lit in anticipation of her arrival. The bathroom is through there. He indicated a doorway. You'll find everything you need. Mia moved to the window, gazing out at the unfamiliar landscape that had become her sanctuary. What happens tomorrow? Alexei remained by the door, maintaining a respectful distance that somehow emphasized the growing connection between them. Tomorrow we begin to address the Baranov situation permanently. My people are already implementing contingency protocols in Chicago. And me? What's my role in all this? His expression softened almost imperceptibly. Tonight you rest. Tomorrow, if you're willing, I'd value your insights. Your understanding of behavioral patterns might prove useful in anticipating Baranov's next move. The acknowledgement of her potential contribution, not just as a witness to be protected, but as a valuable ally, sent an unexpected warmth through her. I'll see you in the morning then, she said. Alexei nodded once. Sleep well, Ms. Reynolds. Mia, she corrected. After everything that's happened, I think we're past formalities. Something flickered in his gray eyes, perhaps, or appreciation. Mia, he agreed, her name and his accent carrying a weight she hadn't anticipated. Until morning. Morning came with slanting sunlight through tall windows and the distant sound of birds Mia couldn't identify. For a disorienting moment, she didn't recognize her surroundings, the timber beam ceiling, the unfamiliar weight of handcrafted quilts, the scent of pine and wood smoke. Then reality reassembled itself. The coffee shop, the laser site, Alexei, the escape north. She showered in the adjoining bathroom, which somehow managed to be both rustic and luxurious, with heated stone floors and artisan-made toiletries. In the closet, she found clothes in her exact size, practical but expensive items that suggested whoever had selected them understood both her preferences and the realities of rural Wisconsin. When she descended to the main floor, she found Alexei in what appeared to be a study, surrounded by monitors displaying security feeds, financial data, and what looked like personnel files. He'd changed from yesterday's attire into a simple black sweater and dark jeans, an outfit that somehow emphasized rather than diminished his authority. Good morning, he said without looking up from the tablet in his hand. Did you sleep well? Better than I expected, Mia admitted, taking in the technology that seemed incongruous against the room's antique furnishing. Considering yesterday I witnessed an attempted murder, was targeted for elimination by the Russian mob, and fled the city where I've lived my entire adult life. That earned a brief smile. Perspective is a powerful adaptation mechanism. She moved further into the room, noting the maps displayed on one of the screened Chicago neighborhoods with various properties highlighted. Are these your holdings? Some of them, Alexei confirmed, setting down the tablet. Others belong to Baranov. We're assessing vulnerable points in his infrastructure. You're planning a counterattack, Mia observed. Not a question. I'm planning to end this situation permanently, he corrected. Baranov violated fundamental protocols by targeting me in a public space, endangering civilians. In our world, such actions demand response. Clinical detachment in his voice should have disturbed her. Instead, Mia found herself analyzing it from a psychological perspective. The compartmentalization, necessary for survival in high-stress environments. Pragmatic approach to violence she'd studied in special forces operators. And how do I fit into this response, she asked. Alexei gestured to a chair beside his desk. That depends on you. You have unique insights into human behavior that my tact lacks. If you're willing, I'd value your analysis of Baranov's likely next moves. Mia sat, considering the request. You're asking me to actively participate in an organized crime conflict. I'm asking you to apply your expertise to help prevent further bloodshed, he countered. Baranov is volatile. Understanding his psychological patterns could mean the difference between targeted precision and collateral damage. Put it that way, her participation almost sounded ethical. Almost. Show me what you know about him, she said finally. I'll tell you what I see. For the next hour. Alexei briefed her on Mikhail Baranov, his history, known associates, business operations, and previous conflict resolution. Mia listened intently, her academic training transforming the information into behavioral patterns and psychological profiles. He displays classic narcissistic traits combined with borderline features, she observed, studying surveillance photos of the man she'd glimpsed from her window yesterday. The grandiosity, the black and white thinking, you're either an asset or a threat, nothing in between. And his next move, he won't wait for you to return. That would surrender initiative. Mia tapped a map of Chicago displaying Alexei's known properties. He'll target your visible assets. First restaurants, clubs, legitimate businesses. It's not just strategic. It's personal. He needs to demonstrate dominance publicly. Agreed, Alexei nodded. We've already enhanced security at those locations, but that's what he expects, Mia continued. The more interesting question is what he'll do when those obvious targets yield nothing. Narcissists don't handle frustration well. He'll escalate, Alexei concluded. Unpredictably, Mia emphasized. That's the danger. If he can't hurt you directly, he'll look for what you value: people, places, symbol. The more frustrated he becomes, the less he'll adhere to traditional boundaries. Alexei's expression darkened, which is why we need to resolve this quickly. A knock at the study door interrupted them. Petro entered, carrying a satellite phone. Natalia, he said simply, handing the device to Alexei. The conversation that followed was terse and entirely in Ukrainian, but Mia didn't need translation to understand its gravity. Alexei's posture stiffened, his responses becoming increasingly clipped until he finally ended the call. Baranov's people hit 3 of our locations simultaneously, he reported, his voice controlled despite the tension evident in his jaw. The restaurant in Lincoln Park, the nightclub downtown, and the distribution center on the west side. Casualties? Petro asked. 2 security personnel at the distribution center. Wounded, not killed. Alexei turned to Mia. Your assessment was correct. He's making a public statement. It's only the beginning, she warned. He'll continue escalating until he gets a reaction. Alexei nodded, then addressed his uncle. Initiate Protocol VAV. All available assets. He turned back to the monitors, adjusting displays to show additional locations. Natalia is coordinating our people in Chicago. We have 12 hours before Baranov realizes his attacks yielded nothing valuable. And then? Mia asked. Then we implement the resolution you helped design, he replied. Precision over force, targeting his psychological vulnerabilities rather than just his physical ones. The strategy session continued through the morning and into early afternoon. Mia found herself fully engaged, applying her academic training to practical situations in ways her professors had never envisioned. Her insights on Baranov's personality structure informed tactical decisions about timing, messaging, and pressure points. You have a natural aptitude for this, Petro observed during a brief lunch break. They'd moved to the main house's kitchen, where the older man prepared simple but delicious sandwiches with homemade bread. The ability to see beyond surface behaviors to underlying patterns. It's just education. Mia demurred, accepting the plate he offered. Education provides tools, Alexei countered, joining them at the rustic wooden table. But intuition determines how effectively those tools are applied. You spotted a sniper's laser on instinct alone, Todd. Something in his tone made her look up, finding his gray eyes studying her with an intensity that sent unexpected warmth through her chest. In just 2 days, their relationship had evolved from barista and customer to something far more complex, against a common threat. Yes, but also something less easily defined. What happens after? She asked suddenly. Assuming your plan works and Baranov is neutralized, what happens to me? A moment of silence stretched between them, heavy with unasked questions. That, Alexei said carefully, will be entirely your decision. Before she could press for clarification, his satellite phone rang. The call was brief, his responses monosyllabic. It's time, he announced after hanging up. Baranov has taken our bait. He's called a meeting of his lieutenants at his primary residence. The narcissistic need to reassure his subordinates of his control, Mia noted. Just as we predicted. Alexei nodded, something like admiration flickering in his expression. Indeed. And now we move to the final phase. He turned to his uncle. Prepare the helicopter. We leave for Chicago in 1 hour. We? Mia echoed. I'm coming with you? If you choose to, Alexei replied. Your insights would be valuable during the operation. But this is your decision, Mia. You've already done more than could ever be expected. The use of her first name, still rare enough to carry significance, underscored the sincerity of his statement. This wasn't an order, but a genuine choice. I'll come, she said after a moment's consideration. I started this. I should see it through. Something shifted in Alexei's expression. Relief, perhaps, or approval. Then we have preparations to make. Tonight, we end this. The helicopter touched down on a private landing pad atop a nondescript office building in Chicago's financial district. Twilight had descended on the city, transforming the skyline into a glittering constellation against the darkening sky. Mia had never seen her hometown from this perspective, both literally and figurative. Welcome to another of our properties, Alexei said as he helped her from the aircraft. One that doesn't appear in any records Baranov might access. The rooftop door led to a penthouse that functioned as an operational command center. Monitors displayed surveillance feeds from across the city, including several showing Baranov's lakefront mansion where lights blazed from every window. A dozen personnel worked at various stations, acknowledging Alexei with respectful nods as he entered. Natalia met them immediately, her usual efficiency now charged with focused intensity. The gathering is proceeding as anticipated, she reported. 17 lieutenants confirmed in attendance. Security perimeter as expected. And our assets? Alexei asked, moving to the central display where a tactical map showed various positions marked with blue indicators. In position, financial protocols implemented at 1700 hours. Digital infrastructure breach successful at 1730. Natalia glanced at Mia with something like approval. Your psychological assessment proved remarkably accurate. Baranov reacted exactly as predicted to the financial pressure. Narcissists hate public humiliation above all else, Mia observed, studying the surveillance feed. Freezing his accounts during a leadership meeting guaranteed he'd keep everyone there while trying to fix it. Alexei gestured for her to join him at a quieter corner of the room, his voice dropping to ensure privacy. You don't have to stay for this part. Victor can take you to a secure location until it's finished. Mia considered the offer, knowing what finished meant in this context. 3 days ago, she'd been a criminal psychology student with theoretical knowledge. Now she was actively participating in what amounted to a highly sophisticated, organized crime takedown. I'm staying, she said finally. I made my choice when I knocked over that espresso. Something flickered in Alexei's expression. Respect, perhaps, or something deeper. He nodded once. Then let me explain the final phase. The plan, as it unfolded over the next 2 hours, revealed a precision and restraint Mia hadn't expected, rather than a violent assault on Baranov's compound. Alexei's strategy combined financial strangulation, digital infiltration, and carefully applied pressure to Baranov's key allies. One by one, lieutenants began leaving the mansion, summoned away by mysterious communications. You're isolating him, Mia realized, watching the surveillance feed as the gathering steadily diminished. Physically and psychologically, Alexei confirmed, for someone with Baranov's personality structure, abandonment is more devastating than direct confrontation, and more effective, she added. If you killed him, someone else would simply take his place. But this way, single quotes, this way he destroys himself. Alexei's expression remained impassive, but satisfaction colored his tone. His authority depends on perception of strength. Once that perception crumbles, single quotes, by midnight, only 3 vehicles remained at Baranov's compound. The surveillance feed showed the man himself pacing his study, phone pressed to his ear, his earlier composure shattered by increasingly desperate gestures. It's time, Alexei said, turning to Natalia. Prepare the car. 20 minutes later, Mia found herself in the back of an armored SUV approaching Baranov's lakefront property. Security protocols had clearly broken down, the gates stood open, the guardhouse empty. Your psychological warfare worked better than expected, she observed as they pulled into the circular driveway. Fear is contagious, Alexei replied, especially among those whose loyalty is purchased rather than earned. Only Victor accompanied them into the mansion, though Mia knew other Volkov operatives had established a perimeter around the property. The interior was ostentatious in a way that made Alexei's residence seem understated by comparison. Gilded fixtures, marble statues, artwork clearly selected for price rather than appreciation. They found Baranov in his study, a tumbler of vodka in one hand, a pistol in the other. He looked up as they entered, his eyes widening at the sight of Mia. The barista, he said, a bitter laugh escaping him. Of course, Mr. Baranov. Alexei greeted him with formal courtesy that somehow emphasized rather than diminished the power dynamic. I believe we have matters to conclude. What followed was not the violent confrontation Mia had braced for, but something far more civilized on the surface, and far more devastating in substance. Alexei methodically outlined the complete dismantling of Baranov's organization. Accounts frozen, lieutenants turned, supply chains disrupted, political protection withdrawn. You could have simply killed me, Baranov said when Alexei finished, his earlier arrogance replaced by resigned understanding. Death is quick, Alexei replied. Some lessons require more time to appreciate fully. The terms were non-negotiable. Immediate retirement to a property in Arizona, transfer of all Chicago operations to Alexei's organization, and a binding agreement enforced by the Council of Families that governed their world's most fundamental protocols. And if I refuse? Baranov asked, though his tone suggested he already knew the answer. Then Miss Reynolds' psychological assessment of your probable behavior will guide our response, Alexei said simply. She has been remarkably accurate thus far. Baranov's gaze shifted to Mia, reassessment evident in his eyes. A criminal psychologist, he said slowly, not just a barista who got lucky. Both, actually, Mia replied, though I doubt I'll be returning to coffee service anytime soon. The former crime boss set down his gun with deliberate care. You've chosen an interesting protege, Volkov, or is it partner? Alexei didn't respond to the implication, maintaining his focus on business. The remaining details were settled with surprising efficiency, papers signed, arrangements confirmed, the transfer of power executed with the formality of a corporate acquisition rather than a criminal enterprise changeover. Dawn was breaking as they left Baranov's mansion for the last time. In the back of the SUV, Mia felt the weight of the night's events settling over her, the culmination of a transformation that had begun with a split-second decision in a coffee shop just days earlier. What happens now? She asked as they drove along Lakeshore Drive, the city beginning to stir around them. Alexei turned to her, his customary reserve softening. That depends on you. My old life isn't really an option anymore. It could be with certain adjustments, he replied carefully. Security provisions, new identity if necessary. You could complete your degree, pursue the career you planned. The offer was generous, but they both recognized the artifice it would require. She had seen too much, learned too much, become too much a part of his world to simply step back into her former life. Or, she prompted. Or you could continue what you've started, he said simply. Your insights saved lives yesterday. Your understanding of behavioral patterns provides a perspective my organization has lacked. There would be a place for you, if you wanted it. The implication hung between them, weightier than just a job offer. And what about us? She asked directly. This thing that's been building since I spotted that laser sight. For the first time since she'd met him, Alexei Volkov looked momentarily uncertain. That also depends on your choice. Chicago passed outside the windows, the city she'd always known transformed by her new understanding of the powers that operated beneath its surface. 3 days ago, she'd been a barista studying criminal psychology. Now she was being offered a place within the very world she'd once only studied from a distance. I want to finish my degree, she said finally, but I also want to see where this leads, both the work and ... whatever this is between us. The smile that transformed his features was genuine, reaching his eyes in a way she'd seen only glimpses of before. Then we began there. As the SUV turned onto Michigan Avenue, morning sunlight glinted off the windows of the Crescent coffee shop where everything had changed. Mia caught Alexei watching her reflection in the glass, his expression thoughtful. Something on your mind? She asked. I was just thinking, he replied, how fortunate it is that you know when to smile and keep talking and when to knock over an espresso.